Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are undertaking, well, a really profound exploration.
We certainly are.
We're aiming straight for the heart of, the biggest questions. Metaphysics, theology. We're looking at the ultimate nature of existence itself.
That's right. The identity of what the sources call the soul reality.
Yeah, moving past just how the universe works to, well, what is fundamentally real.
And the source material we're working with today presents a framework that's incredibly rigorous.
Yeah.
But also challenging, definitely challenging.
How so?
Well, it really forces a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
We often think of the creator as, the greatest being among many or the most powerful.
Sure, the top of the hierarchy.
Exactly. But these sources demand we see the creator as the only being that exists in and of itself, the only self-existent being. Everything else is fundamentally different.
So this focus on the creator as the sole reality, that's the starting point for everything else.
Absolutely. It sets the stage for understanding all dependent existence, what the sources call pijamol, created beings.
Right.
Us. Everything.
Right. It's like getting the foundation right. If you start with the wrong premise about what existence is, then everything built on that idea is about life, death, destiny. It all gets skewed.
Precisely. So our mission today, really, is to trace that core logic. We want to extract the principles that govern this singularity of the creator, the absolute dependency of creation, and then where it all leads the destiny planned for everything within that structure.
And we'll be drawing heavily on the specific biblical interpretations that these sources lay out.
Yes. And for you, the listener, hopefully this structured approach helps. We're not just listing theological points. We're trying to follow the severe logical path that flows from this single, pretty radical idea that the creator is the only thing that truly is, in the ultimate sense.
Okay, let's dive in then. Section 1, the principle of absolute singularity. The Korean phrase in the source is "Haka," essentially, only God exists.
That's the bedrock.
So let's unpack this idea of the creator as the unique self-existing foundation. The soul reality. What are the kind of philosophical implications of calling the creator the soul reality?
Oh, they're huge. The immediate implication is that dependency is absolute, total. If the creator is the only self-existing life, then everything else, literally everything, exists only as a contingent reality, something that's held in existence.
Not existing on its own power.
Not at all. It takes us right back to that foundational statement in Exodus 3.1, the creator's self-definition. I am who I am.
Or as the Korean translation cited puts it, Hyo-ae-sun, the one who exists by himself.
Exactly. That statement is like the polar opposite of created existence. It defines what the creator is by stating what everything else is not.
It sets the creator apart as the uncaused cause, right? Doesn't need anything before it, doesn't need anything outside it to keep it going.
It just is pure being.
Pure being, okay.
And because he is self-existent, logically, he must be the absolute source, the Gian one, as the texts say, of everything else that exists.
Everything flows from that single point.
Right. And Psalm 90, verse 2 really captures this timelessness, describing God existing from everlasting to everlasting, even before the mountains were formed, before the earth existed.
And that's not just saying he's really, really old.
No, it's much more profound. It's saying he exists outside of and prior to the very concepts we rely on, material structure, space, even time itself. He's the precondition for those things.
So foundational fact established. Nothing else shares this quality of self-existence. It belongs solely to the creator.
Correct.
Now, this leads us straight into the next point, which feels like a direct consequence. The exclusivity of divinity and power. If the creator is the sole reality, well, what about other gods, other powers?
Logically, they're impossible. The sources are absolutely emphatic on this, using texts like Isaiah 43.9 and 44.6. So, before me, no God was formed, nor shall there be any after me. And I am the first, and I am the last. Besides me, there is no God. Pretty clear statements.
Seems definitive. But the sources apparently go deeper than just quoting scripture here. They offer a kind of logical proof based on the creator's nature.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting, moving beyond just assertion to deduction. It hinges on the implications of the creator being infinite and omniscient.
Okay, break that down. How does infinity prove singularity?
Well, if the creator is truly infinite Mohanasiddha, limitless in every conceivable way, including knowledge, then he must possess total, complete knowledge of all actual and all possible existence.
Okay, makes sense. Infinite knowledge means knowing everything.
Right. So therefore, if another God, another self-existent reality did exist, The creator, being omniscient, would absolutely know about it.
He could not know.
Exactly. And if he knew such a being existed, he could not truthfully declare, "There is none besides me." To do so would be a lie.
Which contradicts the idea of a perfect, necessary being. A self-existent being can't be based on deception.
Precisely. So the argument is, an absolutely omniscient being making a statement of absolute exclusivity must be telling the absolute truth. The statement itself becomes proof.
Wow. So the claim, "I am the only one from an infinite being," is self-validating, because if it weren't true, he'd know it wasn't true and couldn't say it.
That's the core of the argument presented. It means the very concept of a rival, co-equal, uncreated being is ontologically impossible within this framework. Reality, at its absolute foundation, can only sustain one sole reality.
That really locks it down. It's not just saying other gods don't exist. It's saying they can't exist logically.
Correct. It reinforces the radical implications of that infinity muhanasida.
And that infinity, that lack of limits, has some staggering consequences for how we picture reality itself, doesn't it?
It really does. If the creator is infinite, then there can be no place outside of him. If there were an outside, he would be bounded, defined by that boundary, and therefore not infinite.
So everything is in him.
That's what the sources argue, using texts like John 10.29 to suggest that all things, everything within space-time, are contained within him.
That's a mind bender. Every galaxy, every atom, every thought happening inside the soul reality.
It changes the relationship dramatically. It's not just a creator watching creation from outside. It's a sustainer enveloping and upholding creation from within his own being.
That's incredibly intimate and maybe a bit overwhelming to think about.
It carries immense philosophical weight. We naturally picture separation, but this suggests a radical unity, a fundamental indonit. And this spatial containment leads directly to the idea of temporal sovereignty, too.
Right, the alpha and omega. If he contains all of space, it follows. He must contain all of time as well. Revelation 1.8, the beginning and the end.
Exactly. Because time, just like space or matter, is presented as a condition of created existence. It's a dependent reality, part of the package of pijomo.
So time had a beginning.
Yes. And therefore, the creator existed before time began, and he will exist after creation as we know it is complete.
But this is where our brains start to short circuit, right? We experience time linearly past, present, future, one moment after another. How do the sources suggest the creator relates to our timeline?
They argue that for the creator, our past, present, and future aren't sequential like they are for us. They're all, well, simultaneously sustained realities within his infinite scope. Revelation 4.8 and 11.17 talk about him as the one who was and who is to come.
Like, he sees the whole movie at once, not frame by frame.
That's a good analogy. Or maybe like an author holding a finished book. Every event, the first chapter, the middle, the ending, it's all equally present and accessible to the author's awareness. The creator isn't subject to time. He's the master of time.
That changes everything about concepts like prophecy or predestination, doesn't it? If all moments are now for him.
That gives him a completely different weight. Every prayer ever uttered, every historical event, every future possibility. It's all a presently sustained reality from his perspective.
Okay, so Section 1 establishes this absolute radical boundary. There's the uncreated existence, the soul reality, infinite, eternal, containing all things. And then there's dependent existence, everything else, the pijomo.
That's the fundamental divide.
Yeah.
And understanding that divide is crucial for everything that follows.
Right, which brings us to Section 2, focusing on us, the created beings, the pijomo. How do we exist within this framework?
Well, the core concept here is what the outline called borrowed life.
Borrowed life. That sounds precarious. It definitely bumps up against our usual sense of autonomy, doesn't it? Like, I feel like I exist on my own.
It does feel that way to us, absolutely. But it's the direct logical outflow from Section 1. If the creator is the only self-existent reality, then created beings, pijomo, simply cannot possess self-sustaining life. It's not in our nature.
So our existence is a continuous gift.
Exactly. We exist only because the creator is continuously, actively, moment by moment, sustaining us with his life. There's a reference in 1 Samuel 25.29 that pictures our life as being bound up in the bundle of life with the Lord.
Like we're tethered to the source constantly, a kind of spiritual umbilical cord, maybe?
That's a powerful image, yeah. It's not just that he kicked things off and walked away. He's actively keeping the engine running. constantly.
And the sources make this very direct.
Very. Acts 17.25 emphasizes that the Creator personally provides life, breath, and all things to humanity. It's an ongoing, intimate provision.
And then there's that famous line from Acts 17.28.
Right, the absolute statement of dependency. In Him we live and move and have our being. Take us out of Him, or if He were to simply stop that act of sustaining instantly. Our continued existence is portrayed as a constant act of divine will, not some inherent property of matter or biology.
Okay. That level of dependency is profound, and it leads into the mechanics of how this life is actually sustained, involving the divine spirit. The sources seem to break down our being into different components.
Yes, this is really crucial for understanding how life and death function in this model. They use specific Hebrew terms, which the source material highlights, to differentiate the elements involved.
Okay, what are they?
The Creator preserves life by holding, essentially, two things in His hand, according to Job 12.10. First, the soul, which is nephesh in Hebrew, or hana in the Korean context, used by the sources. This is like the animated life principle, the consciousness.
The thing that makes us alive rather than just matter.
Exactly. But second, and perhaps even more fundamentally, He holds the spirit, which is ruach in Hebrew, or yang in the Korean. This is described as the spirit of all humankind.
So nephesh is individual life consciousness, and ruach is something more universal or foundational.
Ruach seems to represent the dynamic, sustaining energy, the divine breath or spirit that originates directly from the Creator and empowers life itself. It's seen as more fundamental.
How so?
Well, the sources connect this ruach to the very creation of the cosmos. Psalm 33.6 says that the heavens and all their host, everything up there, were made by the word of the Lord and by the ruach, the breath or spirit from His mouth.
So the ruach isn't just in humans, it's the power behind all creation.
It seems to be presented that way, yes. The ultimate divine energy that powers existence. The nephesh, or hun, would then be the individualized manifestation of that life force within a specific creature.
Okay, I think I see the distinction. Ruach is the raw power source from God. Nephesh is how it animates an individual being.
It's a good way to put it. And understanding this makes the mechanism of death very clear and logical within this system.
Because death isn't just the body failing.
No. In this view, death isn't some natural process inherent to existence. It's the direct result of the Creator withdrawing that sustaining force.
Specifically the ruach.
Yes, Job 34.14-15 and Psalm 104.29 are cited. When God withdraws His spirit, ruach, and also His breath, neshma, another related term for life breath, created beings perish immediately.
And the result?
They return to the dust, as Ecclesiastes 12.7 says. The physical form dissolves. But crucially, the spirit, the ruach or yang that was borrowed it, returns to the Creator who gave it.
So it's like the power cord is unplugged and the energy goes back to the power station.
That's exactly the idea. It's a complete retrieval of the sustaining force, resulting in the cessation of the creature's existence.
Which reinforces the next point. The Creator as the master of existence and non-existence. The AOES.
Yes, and this distinction is incredibly important, especially when we get to judgment later on.
Because for us, as creatures, existence is, well, everything. And non-existence is the ultimate void, right? True nothingness.
From our perspective, absolutely. But the sources argue that from the Creator's perspective, as the sole reality, it can't be like that. He stands outside that duality.
How so?
He can bring existence out of what we perceive as non-existence. Romans 4.17 is used here.
Yeah.
He calls those things which do not exist as though they did exist.
So what looks like nothing to us is just unrealized potential to Him.
Or unmanifested potential, exactly. Something held within His infinite will, but not currently being actively sustained in the way we perceive existence. For Him, the unreal is simply the unmanifested.
Which implies He could make anything appear from nothing at any moment.
By divine decree, yes. And just as crucially, the reverse is true. What does exist can be caused to vanish, to return to that state of non-existence, simply by Him withdrawing His sustaining will.
So the terms existence and non-existence, as we understand them, trapped in space-time, they don't really apply to the Creator.
The sources stress that they hold no ultimate meaning for the soul reality. For Him, it's all about states of being, either sustained according to His purpose or not sustained.
Okay. This is leading inevitably then to the limits of our own understanding as created beings.
Absolutely. We are radically constrained. Time, space, these are our boundaries. We perceive, we reason, we guess, but always from within these constraints.
How can a dependent being, sustained within the system, truly grasp the perspective of the one who sustains the whole system?
The sources argue it's fundamentally impossible through our own efforts. We're compared to dust in Hebrews 12.9, a transient, created thing, trying to comprehend the eternal sustainer of the four dimensions.
Yeah, the question posed is stark. How can creatures inside space-time understand a being who upholds space-time and sees all moments at once?
The logical gap is just too vast to bridge with finite intellect alone.
That's where that analogy comes in, from Job about explaining complex adult matters to a child.
Exactly. Job 32.8-9. Our knowledge, especially of divine things, is presented as a controlled allowance, a gift. We only know what the Creator chooses to reveal, what he allows us to grasp.
It's not something we achieve purely through reason or observation.
No. And importantly, this capacity for spiritual comprehension, this understanding, is itself granted through the spirit or breath of the Almighty, the Neshama. It's an act of grace, not an inherent human ability.
So any deep dive like this, any theological exploration, has to start with a degree of humility, recognizing we're not discovering secrets God didn't know, but receiving a measure of insight he's granting.
That's the necessary posture, according to these sources. We're finite minds trying to apprehend the infinite, but we can only do that as far as the infinite enables us.
Which sets a very serious tone for the next major section. If we're this dependent, this limited in understanding, how did things go so wrong that a whole plan of redemption became necessary?
That's the critical question. Why salvation?
Let's get into that. Section 3. The plan of redemption and the role of the Son, who the sources refer to as the second Godhead.
Right. The need for this redemption plan, according to the sources, stems directly from the Creator's fundamental nature, which is defined as love, or sarang, in the Korean phrasing used. 1 John 4.8. God is love.
But this love isn't just like a feeling.
No, it's presented as the fundamental operational law or rule of creation itself. And this law of love is conveyed through what the sources call the commandment, the gimyeong.
So the commandment is basically the user's manual for existing happily and sustainably within the reality created by love.
That's a great way to put it. It's the blueprint for alignment with the soul reality. Therefore, deviating from this commandment is what constitutes sin.
And sin isn't just breaking a rule, it's
functionally suicidal in this framework, because it means cutting oneself off, by choice, from the only source of life and existence, the Creator whose nature is that commandment of love.
So salvation became necessary because humanity somehow broke that connection.
Yes. The sources state that humankind was successfully attacked by the enemy, Satan, and began straying from God's law, God's rule, rejecting that divine rule as warned way back in Genesis 2.17, you shall surely die, inevitably leads to death, which is the severing of that vital connection to the source.
So the goal of redemption isn't just forgiveness. It's about restoring that connection and ultimately completing creation, bringing it to a state where it perfectly follows that law of love.
Exactly, bringing creation to its intended, stable, eternal state. And this massive undertaking requires the specific intervention and central role of the Son, the second Godhead.
What's his unique position in this? He's not another creator, right, based on Section 1?
Absolutely not. He occupies a unique metaphysical space. He is described as the visible image of the invisible Creator. And Colossians 1.15 calls him the firstborn of all creation.
The image, so the perfect representation, making the unknowable Creator somehow knowable.
Precisely. The perfect manifestation of the soul reality in a form that creation can interact with and comprehend.
And he's also the agent of creation.
Yes, Colossians 1.16:17 is key here. All things were created through him and also for him. He's not just the architect, he's also the sustainer. Hebrews 1.3 says he sustains all things, the very fabric of reality, by his powerful word. He's the mediator through whom the power of the soul reality flows into creation.
Okay, now let's dig into this concept the sources introduced. The Son as the prototype, the Wankyang. This sounds really important for understanding humanity's destiny. What does prototype mean here?
This is a fascinating and crucial idea in these texts. The sources explain that when the second Godhead takes the radical step of becoming a creature in Ganai Dosinda, he becomes human. He isn't just visiting. He is establishing the ultimate, finished model for what a created being, a pijamul, is supposed to be.
The template, the goal.
Exactly. He becomes the very first creature to possess what the sources call perfect free will.
Okay, perfect free will. We need to be careful here. That doesn't mean he could choose evil but didn't, right? In this framework, what does it mean?
That's a vital clarification. In this context, Perfect free will signifies the completed state of a created being's will. It's a will so perfectly and permanently aligned with the Creator's commandment, the law of love, that the very possibility of choosing sin, of rebelling, has been eradicated. Sin becomes ontologically impossible for that perfected creature.
So perfect free will isn't about the ability to choose wrongly, but the perfected inability to choose wrongly because the alignment with love is absolute.
Yes, that's the state he embodies as the prototype. He is the kano meratul, the firstborn, in the sense that he's the first example of this new, perfected, kind of dependent existence, a creature who will never sin.
And the idea is that by looking to him, following him, being united with him, other creatures can also reach this state.
That's the path to perfection outlined. Through connection with the Son, creatures have their own free will perfected, they attain this inability to sin, and they achieve the true image of God the state creation was always intended for.
So the whole plan is about manufacturing more beings like the prototype, beings with this perfected will.
That's a way to conceptualize the goal, yes. Bringing many sons and daughters to glory, reflecting the image of the firstborn.
Which leads us to the most paradoxical event in history, according to these sources. The Son's descent and the cross, the Sipjaga.
This is presented as the absolute pivot point, the moment where the infinite and finite collide in an incomprehensible way. The second Godhead, the sustainer of reality, willingly emptied himself, susurul busigo, and became a dependent human creature within space-time.
The ultimate paradox being
that he simultaneously continued to sustain the entire universe, upholding the very space-time. He was now living within as a limited being. Our mind, bound by space-time logic, just hit a wall there. How can the container also be contained?
It's beyond our grasp. A statement of ultimate sovereignty, perhaps, shown by willingly operating under the created constraints.
Perhaps. And the purpose of this incarnation, and specifically the cross, goes beyond just a general sense of forgiveness. The sources pinpoint specific functions.
Where?
Two core things stand out. First, the Son's absolute obedience, even to the point of death on the cross, serves to prove the truth of the commandment, the Jimeongui Jinsilim.
How does his death prove the commandment's truth?
By demonstrating its ultimate consequence. His death confirms that the wage of sin is death, that rebellion against the law of love truly does sever the connection to life, resulting in cessation. Even for him, the perfect prototype taking on the consequence vicariously. It validates the fundamental rule of reality, aligned with love to live, rebel, and perish.
So he experienced the consequence he didn't deserve to prove the rule was real for those who did deserve it.
That's one key aspect. It wasn't arbitrary. It confirmed the inherent justice of the commandment.
Okay, and the second core function.
The second function is that the cross is the mechanism that actually completes creation. It's the act that perfects the free will of created beings who unite with him. It eradicates the very possibility of sin within the redeemed community, and it achieves atonement josam, the cleansing forgiveness of sins through his shed blood.
So it's both a validation and a transformation. It proves the old rule and inaugurates the new perfected state.
Exactly. It structurally cleanses creation and prepares it for its final, eternal, rebellion-free existence.
This makes the Son absolutely central to the ongoing administration of life, then.
Indispensable. The sources quote John 5.26. The Father gives the Son life in himself. This means life, sustained existence, is now transmitted to created beings only through the Son.
No other way.
No other way. If you reject the Son, you're rejecting the sole conduit for receiving life from the sole reality. 1 John 5.12 is cited as being absolutely definitive on this. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life.
It sounds almost administrative, like a cosmic bureaucracy, but based on relationship.
It has that element of structure, yes. The Son inherited the name, the authority of the Creator. And those who submit to his rule, which is the rule of the commandment, the law of love, they gain access to that life.
And how is this life delivered? What's the medium?
The Word, the Melseum. The Word is presented as being life itself, and also the means by which this divine life is conveyed. The sources point to 1 John 1.1, identifying this life-giving Word as the Son himself, the one who is seen, heard, and touched.
So he is the message, the medium, and the life itself.
All three. The intermediary, the prototype, the life-giver. And, as we'll see next, ultimately, the judge.
This incredibly intricate structure based on singularity, dependency, the prototype, the commandment, it all leads, inevitably, to the final outcome, the destiny of created beings.
Yes, the sorting, the final judgment.
So section 4, the final judgment and the completion of creation. This seems to be where the creator's total sovereignty over existence and non-existence comes fully into play.
It's the ultimate demonstration of that principle. The sources emphasize that the Creator possesses absolute governance over destiny. 1 Samuel 2.6 is quoted quite starkly.
What does it say?
The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to Sheol, or Umbu, the term used for Hades the grave in the sources, and brings up absolute power over life and death.
And it goes further, doesn't it? Controlling fortune.
Yes, 1 Samuel 2.7, it continues. He makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. The point is, no aspect of destiny, no outcome, falls outside his jurisdiction.
And within this structure, the Son, having completed his work on the cross, holds a specific authority.
He does. Revelation 1.8 says he holds the keys to death and Hades. Imbube. Having conquered death and the realm associated with sin, he now controls access and destiny.
What exactly is Hades or Imbu in this context? Is it hellfire?
The sources seem to define Imbu or Sheol less as a place of fiery torment itself, and more as the realm associated with sin, separation from God, and death, the spiritual domain where the enemy, Satan, is currently contained. Holding the keys means the Son have authority over that entire state of separation and its inhabitants.
Okay, and the actual act of judgment.
The Father, the sources say, has committed all judgment to the Son. John 5.22.
Which makes sense, right? If the Son is the perfect image, the living embodiment of the commandment, he is the standard.
He is the standard by which all created beings are measured. The judgment process itself, described in John 5, begins with a universal resurrection. All who are in the tombs, the Nemeon, the place of the dead, will hear his voice. John 5.28. This is the moment of universal summons before the judge.
And this leads to the great separation.
Yes, the two ultimate outcomes detailed right there in John 5.29. There will be a resurrection of life.
For whom?
For those who did good works, meaning those who lived in accordance with the commandment of love, demonstrating their alignment with the Creator's nature.
And the other outcome?
The resurrection of judgment. For those who did evil works, those who rejected the commandment, lived in rebellion and harmed others.
So the commandment, that law of love, is definitively the final standard. It's not about belief alone or ritual.
It's about the demonstrated reality of one's alignment. Does your life reflect the love that is the foundation of existence? If yes, you prove yourself compatible with eternal perfected existence. If no, you prove yourself fundamentally incompatible with the sustained reality flowing from the Creator.
Okay. This brings us to the most severe aspect of this framework, and one that differs significantly from some other views: the final fate of those who are judged negatively. Annihilation.
This is indeed a critical and defining feature of the eschatology presented in these sources. It's not eternal conscious torment.
So what happens?
The sources state it plainly, using texts like 1 Samuel 2.0. The Creator will shatter his adversaries. The ultimate consequence for defying God's rule and causing harm is described as being consumed and destroyed.
How is this justified within the logic of the soul reality we started with? How is it seen as fair or final?
It's tied directly back to the principle of dependency and the nature of the Creator, who is described in Hebrews 12.29 as a consuming fire.
The consuming fire.
Yes. Those who reject the rule of love must face the consequence, the penalty for their transgression. Justice requires it. However, and this is key, because they are pijamol, dependent beings without self-existence, they cannot sustain themselves eternally, even in torment, once they are definitively cut off from the sole source of life.
So the fire isn't primarily for torture, but for purification through destruction.
Exactly. The lake of fire, mentioned in Revelation 20, which consumes death and Hades and anyone not found in the book of life, is presented here not as an eternal torture chamber, but as the mechanism of final, utter consumption. An incinerator for rebellion.
They are consumed. The word used is so mild. And then?
And then they return to human non-existence, the state from which they were originally called into being. The consuming fire destroys that which is fundamentally incompatible with his nature of love, sin, rebellion, harm. The ultimate fate is the cessation of their sustained existence.
So this serves two goals simultaneously.
It seems so. First, justice is fully served, the penalty is paid. Second, creation is truly completed and purified. There's no eternal, ongoing pocket of rebellion or suffering to mar the final, perfected reality.
The lawbreakers cease to be. Their existence, which was always dependent, is simply no longer sustained.
Yes, it's a radical resolution to the problem of evil. If rebellion persisted eternally, one could argue the Creator's victory wasn't total. Annihilation, in this view, ensures the final state is purely unified, wholly governed by the commandment of love, with no conflicting reality remaining.
That's a stark but logically consistent end, given the premise of absolute dependency.
It follows the logic through to its ultimate conclusion.
Okay, we've covered the beginning, the middle, and the end. But we hit this wall earlier. How can we possibly know any of this for sure, given our limitations? This brings us to the short, final section, section 5, the acquisition of spiritual knowledge.
Right, we have to circle back to this. How do finite minds grasp the infinite plan?
We established it's not primarily through our own intellect.
Correct. The sources insist quite strongly that true understanding of these divine mysteries comes only through direct divine action, through revelation. It's fundamentally a gift, not an achievement.
So all this complex metaphysical reasoning we've just walked through, the paradox of the prototype sun sustaining space-time while inside it, the mechanics of annihilation. We can't ultimately prove these things definitively with human logic alone.
According to these texts, no. Our reason can follow the structure, perhaps see the coherence, but the initial spark of understanding, the conviction, comes from elsewhere.
Where?
From the Father. Luke 10.21 is cited. The Father reveals mysteries to whom he chooses, often hiding them from those who rely solely on their own wisdom, the wise and prudent, and revealing them instead to the humble, the receptive, the babes.
And understanding the Son's identity specifically.
That, too, is presented as a direct revelation from the Father. Matthew 16.17, where Jesus tells Peter, "Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven."
It stands to reason, I suppose. If the subject matter, the soul reality, the eternal plan exists outside our categories of time and space, then the mechanism for understanding it probably needs to come from outside time and space, too.
That points directly to the necessity of the Holy Spirit, the pneuma. 1 Corinthians 2.01 asks, "Who knows the thoughts of a person except their own spirit?" Likewise, the deep things of the Creator are only truly known by the Creator's Spirit.
Human reason, however sharp, just can't penetrate the infinite depths on its own power.
It hits its limit. The Holy Spirit, then, received by believers, acts almost like a translator or an illuminator. 1 Corinthians 2 says the Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God, and teaches us, enabling us to discern divine realities.
To distinguish God's thoughts from merely human ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And Ephesians 1.17 speaks of the Father giving the Spirit of wisdom and revelation, pneuma, precisely so that we might know him better.
It loops back perfectly to that core theme of dependency, doesn't it? Just like we depend on the Creator's power for physical life.
We depend on the Creator's Spirit for spiritual understanding. We only grasp the measure of truth that he chooses to illuminate for us.
It makes the whole pursuit of this knowledge feel less like an academic exercise in proving points and more like, well, being receptive, positioning oneself to receive that illumination.
That seems to be the perspective encouraged by the sources, yes.
Yeah.
Humility and openness to divine teaching.
Okay, let's try to wrap our heads around this immense structure. Outro. So what does this all mean? We've journeyed through a really intense, highly structured theological framework today. It's been quite a deep dive.
It really has.
We started with that incredibly radical premise, a singular, self-existent, infinite creator, the sole reality.
Right. And from that single point, we trace the logical consequences through the utterly dependent, borrowed life of created beings, the pijomo, then into the plan of redemption, centered on the Son as the perfect prototype, the one young, who establishes perfect free will.
The one who cannot sin.
And his sacrifice on the cross, validating the commandment and enabling the completion of creation.
And finally, we arrived at the ultimate destiny, resurrection, judgment based on the law of love, and the final, definitive annihilation, somaio, of all rebellion, returning it to non-existence,
It's a comprehensive arc, and the final synthesis, I think, is that this framework presents the entire structure of reality, existence, time, space, life, death, destiny, as absolutely unified under one singular sovereign authority.
The sole reality.
Yes, an authority administered ultimately for the Son, who is the image and the mediator, and the absolute key to continued existence. The prerequisite for being part of the completed creation is alignment with the fundamental law of that reality. The law of love, the commandment.
Adherence validates your capacity for eternal, perfected existence within that framework.
Exactly. And conversely, to choose rebellion, to reject that law of love, is presented not just as breaking a rule, but as willfully severing the necessary connection to the only source of being. It's choosing non-existence.
It certainly offers a very clear, very high-stakes view of existence. There's not much ambiguity there about dependency versus ultimate reality. It's a system built on a kind of severe metaphysical coherence, wouldn't you say? Even when the conclusions, like the sun sustaining reality while inside it or annihilation, push against our normal intuitions.
It definitely prioritizes logical consistency flowing from that initial premise of singularity. And that leaves us, perhaps, with a final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to mull over.
Okay, what is it?
If these sources define the Creator not just as the source of all that is, but also as the absolute master of existence and non-existence, consider this concept we touched on, that even non-existence, the state of being consumed, somaio, and returning to allo, remains entirely dependent on and contained within the will of the Creator.
Meaning, even nothingness isn't truly outside his control.
Think about it. If non-existence is simply the absence of his sustaining will for a particular thing, then even that state of not being sustained requires the Creator's implicit permission, or rather, his active choice not to sustain. What does it truly mean for nothing, not even the void, to be genuinely outside of the ultimate divine authority?
That even non-being is contingent upon the being. Wow. That's definitely something to chew on.
Indeed. Something to consider as you reflect on the nature of reality itself.